What's happening everyone, my name is Alex and welcome back. In today's video we are checking out the brand new Phantom X2 Pro. Now most of you never heard of this brand before. Phantom is basically a sub-brand of TECNO. TECNO is well known around Africa, Latin America, Asia, so not necessarily a brand that's well known around North America or Europe. So that's what Phantom is, the brand Phantom. Now, the first thing I've noticed when I took this phone out of the box, I've actually done a bit of an unboxing and I've posted that on my channel if you want to check it out. The first thing that I've noticed is the massive camera module on the back. So this is actually the first phone that I got to try that has a retractable lens on the back. I've never seen this before. And just to give you an idea how big the camera module is, this is how it looks compared to my iPhone 14 Pro. And since we are talking about the iPhone 14 Pro, I've also included the full camera comparison between the X2 Pro and my iPhone 14 Pro, and that one starts at this minute of this video. So if you want to skip right to that camera comparison, go ahead and do that. So in many ways, the X2 Pro is a flagship. This phone is powered by the MediaTek Dimensity 9000 that's paired to 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of internal storage. And this device gets an Antutu benchmark score of just under 1 million. So you already know that you're looking at a very fast device. On the front of the device, we have a massive 6.8 inches AMOLED screen that has a refresh rate of 120 Hz, and the screen is also covered by Gorilla Glass Victus. Now, even though the brightness is not specified anywhere, I can definitely tell you that the screen on this phone is actually a bit brighter than the screen that I have on my Samsung Galaxy S22. So I'm assuming somewhere around 1300 nits for the peak brightness, even though it may be a bit more than that. So a beautiful looking screen that you can see pretty much anywhere. Inside the phone, we also have a 5160 mAh battery that will give you about 6 to 7 hours of screen on time on one charge. So you can easily make it through one day on one charge. And the device comes with a 45-watt fast charger in the box, so charging this from 0 to 100 is done in about an hour. So not bad for a device that's pretty affordable. The phone's frame is made out of metal, and I have to say that the phone does look pretty familiar. It kind of looks like a Huawei / Samsung device from the side here. So yes, the frame is made out of metal. On the right hand side here we have the power button and the volume keys. At the bottom we have the USB-C charging port, the SIM card tray slot, so the device can take 2 SIM cards. It cannot take an SD card. And then we have the holes for the speaker. Unfortunately, this is the only speaker. I was actually hoping that we get one speaker at the top, one at the bottom, but no, there is only one speaker. And you know, with one speaker, well, it's okay, it doesn't sound bad, but it's still one speaker no matter how you want to put it. The back here is made out of plastic, but according to the manufacturer, the back is actually made out of recycled plastic from the ocean. So I guess that's a nice thing. Not to mention that the plastic back doesn't actually feel bad by any means. So I wouldn't say that that plastic back makes the phone feel cheap, like the Samsung Galaxy S21, for example. So it does feel like a premium device. As for the operating system, this is using something called iOS 12. This is based on Android 12, and if you've used the Huawei device in the past or an Honor device in the past, the operating system on this device is pretty much identical. If you don't tell me what phone I'm looking at and you just open the settings app on this, just to give you an example, I would 100% tell you that I'm using a Huawei device. So the operating system is pretty much identical to something that you would find on a Huawei or an Honor device. Now everything runs extremely smooth, so opening apps, closing apps, everything that you're gonna do on it runs extremely smooth. So the same experience that you do get with the Huawei device, so really no difference. So it does perform just like a flagship. Since we have that MediaTek Dimensity 9000 chipset inside this device and that 12 gigs of RAM, of course the phone does perform really well for anything that you're gonna do on it. I did play a variety of games on it and it performs just as good as any other flagship out there, so really no difference, but I did notice that after you play a game for about 20 minutes to half an hour, the phone does get extremely hot. So I'm assuming that if I would keep playing the same game over and over for more than an hour, there would be some thermal throttling happening because the phone will just get way too hot. But performance-wise, yes, the phone is quite powerful. Now, the one thing that I'm not a big fan of regarding this phone is the vibration motor inside it. Whenever you have the phone set to vibrate and it vibrates, it does feel pretty cheap, so I'm not a fan of that. Aside from that, of course, we have NFC inside it, so you can make payments using Google Pay, and we also have a lot of sensors. I've also tried the GPS unit inside it. It takes maybe half a second to find your location, and it doesn't seem to lose it either. So it is very close to a flagship device that you would get from other more expensive brands. And next we're gonna move on and start our camera comparison between this phone and of course my iPhone 14 Pro. The manufacturer's presentation about this phone revolves around the camera system basically, and more specifically the retractable lens that we have on the back here. And I guess that is a very cool thing to see, because you see that camera lens coming out and going back in. So something that you don't typically see with most phones. Now, the one thing that I want to mention quickly is the fact that the portrait mode in the camera app has the most options that I've ever seen on a phone before. Now, these are a couple of examples of portrait mode pictures that I took of Laura the other day. And I mean, some people may actually love those pictures. I sent one of those pictures to her mom and she's like, wow, so beautiful. But if you look at the skin, if you look at everything in those pictures, they look over processed. So you don't actually look the way you show up in those pictures. But I guess some people may actually enjoy that, and those pictures do look ready to be posted on Instagram, if that makes some sense. And with that being said, let's start by checking out some portrait mode pictures that I took with this phone and my iPhone 14 Pro. So of course, if you like those more processed looking pictures, of course you're gonna prefer every single picture from the X2 Pro. But if you want your portrait mode pictures to look a bit more real, I mean the iPhone does process those pictures as well, but if you want them to look a bit more real, you may prefer the ones from the iPhone. So it really comes down to what you like. The X2 Pro basically makes pictures Instagram ready. Moving on to some 5x zoom pictures. So keep in mind that retractable lens is basically 2.5 times zoom. So the iPhone 14 Pro also has a telephoto lens on the back. So here I've done 5x zoom and the pictures are pretty close, but I still find that the iPhone 14 Pro has the slightly sharper pictures, but not by much. On the back of the X2 Pro, we also have an ultra-wide camera. So this one right here is the ultra-wide camera. And of course, we have an ultra-wide camera on the back of the iPhone 14 Pro. And these are some examples of ultra-wide pictures that I took. So here I found that the iPhone 14 Pro has the somewhat wider field of view, so you can see a bit more in those pictures. And also the pictures from the iPhone 14 Pro do seem to be a bit sharper, and the iPhone does seem to handle the bright lights a bit better, because in those pictures where we have the sun right in front of us, I feel that the iPhone does that a bit better. But once again, let's keep in mind the price of this device. And next we are moving on to pictures that I took with the main cameras during the day. Of course, all the pictures are taken on auto mode, and this one right here is the main camera on the back of the X2 Pro. Now, looking at the pictures that I took, I can't really say that one phone is so much better than the other one. The X2 Pro is definitely using a bit more saturated colors in some of those pictures. Maybe some of those pictures do look a bit brighter, but I think it will come down to your personal preference. I can't really say that one is better than the other one. In some pictures, the iPhone does seem to have the slightly better dynamic range, but overall they both do equally good, I'm gonna say, for those cameras taken with the main, for those pictures taken with the main cameras. Next we are gonna move on and check out some pictures that I took at night, of course, with the main cameras and the ultra-wide cameras, and both devices do have a night mode, so the night mode was used for all the pictures that you're seeing on your screen right now. And of course we are starting with the pictures that I took with the main cameras. Now here I've noticed that if you're taking pictures in super dark places, the iPhone will do better. In some of those pictures that I took where it was super dark, I couldn't actually see anything with my own eyes. So the iPhone will do better if it's super dark around you. But if it's not that dark, even the X2 Pro does seem to do quite decent in most of those pictures. Of course, most of those pictures are a bit sharper from the iPhone 14 Pro. Maybe they have a bit better colors, maybe a bit brighter. But overall, I can't really say that the X2 Pro did bad for that main camera and the night mode. Moving on to the ultra-wide cameras and the night mode, well, the X2 Pro doesn't do that great here anymore. But in all fairness, the iPhone 14 Pro doesn't do that great either, but it still does better than the X2 Pro. So most pictures taken by the iPhone 14 Pro are sharper whenever you are using that ultra-wide camera and of course the night mode. I did notice, however, that the X2 Pro does take pictures faster than the iPhone 14 Pro whenever you're using the night mode. Next, we're gonna move on and check out some sample videos that I took with both devices. So if you're recording with the main camera on the back of the X2 Pro, the maximum recording resolution is 4K at 60 frames per second. If you're using the ultra-wide camera, the resolution is 1080p at 30 frames per second. As for the front camera, the maximum recording resolution on the X2 Pro is 1080p at 60 frames per second. Of course, with the iPhone 14 Pro, you can do 4K at 60 with all cameras. And with that being said, let's check out some sample videos that I've done during the day and of course at night, and I will be right back. Alright, we have a quick video test between the iPhone 14 Pro and of course the Phantom X2 Pro. For this recording, I'm using the main cameras on the back of the two devices and recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. On the Phantom X2 Pro, I also have the maximum level of image stabilization set, which is called Ultra Steady or something like that. On the iPhone, we don't really have any levels of image stabilization, so it is the only level of image stabilization available. As you can see for yourself, I am also walking and trying to keep the phones as steady as possible. So we're just gonna cross the road. We're gonna head this way for a bit. I'm gonna stop somewhere around here and we're gonna pan left slowly. And we'll keep going, and we're gonna walk this way. So yeah, this is how recording in 4K at 30 frames per second would look between these two devices. Alright, we have a quick video recording with the front-facing cameras on the iPhone 14 Pro and of course on the Phantom X2 Pro. Now, the maximum recording resolution for the front-facing camera on the Phantom X2 Pro is 1080p at 60 frames per second. We are currently doing 1080p at 30 frames per second, or of course with the iPhone 14 Pro you could record in 4K at 60 frames per second. And we are moving on to a quick recording done with the ultra-wide cameras on the back of the two devices. Now, on the Phantom X2 Pro, you can't select the resolution that you want to film with if you're using the ultra-wide camera. I'm assuming it's recording in 1080p at 30 frames per second, but that is the only resolution available, so you cannot change the resolution to anything if you're using that ultra-wide camera. Of course, with the iPhone 14 Pro, you could record in 4K at 60 frames per second with that ultra-wide camera. So yeah, this is how recording would look like if you're using the ultra-wide cameras on the back of the two devices. Alright, we are moving on to a quick recording in low light. For this recording, I'm doing 4K at 30 frames per second with both devices, and we are using the main cameras on their backs. We're gonna stop somewhere around here. Gonna pan right slowly and back left, of course. And I'm gonna walk this way for a bit. Of course, we have some street lights around, so it's not total darkness, but just so you get an idea how the footage would look like if you're recording in a darker place. And we'll turn around. So yeah, 4K at 30 frames per second with the main cameras. So what do you guys think about those sample videos? Personally, I was quite surprised by the video quality that we get from the main camera, and whenever recording in 4K at 30 frames per second, the video quality was quite good, and also the video stabilization was quite good, actually better than the iPhone 14 Pro in some situations. So not bad for video recordings with the main camera. for the ultra-wide camera and the front camera, not that amazing. Moving on to some selfies, and we are starting with some daytime selfies. Well, here for daytime selfies, I do prefer every single picture that I took with the iPhone 14 Pro because it just retains the skin color better, the details on the skin better, and so on. But for those nighttime selfies, so I did use the night mode for those nighttime selfies, the X2 Pro does seem to do better, even though realistically neither device does that great, but the X2 Pro does seem to do a bit better than the iPhone 14 Pro. So there you have it, this is the Phantom X2 Pro. What do you guys think about this phone? Is it worth it? Is it not? Definitely leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.